All right. Ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, welcome. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the astrology of June 2021, and I am joined today by a very special guest. This is my good friend, CV Henriette of Art of the Zodiac. Oh, hold on a
Hello.
second. No, I should record this. So I just hit the record button, and again, we're talking the astrology of 2021. I am Spencer Michaud, and I'm joined by a very special guest, CV Henriette of Art of the Zodiac. And we're going to be going through kind of a sort of a deep dive into all of the different aspects of June and see what we can unpack. Trying some new things here today. I'm very excited about doing more collaborative things and engaging with the astrological community. So I really appreciate CV's friendship and her ability to, articulate her astrological thoughts very well. So I thought it'd be cool to have her on here. I want to say hello to everyone who's here in the chat. If you are here, let us know that you're here, and tell us where you're coming from. And we can see this in the chat box here, and that will let us know that you are here. And if you have any questions as we're going along, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will try to get to them as well as we can during this Mercury retrograded time period. So, CV, how are you doing?
Wow. I'm well. I thought I was I always think I'm prepared until I look at your notes. Wow. I don't even do astrology like that.
I'm a little extra. I sent CV a copy of these 2 pages of notes that I cranked out like a crazy person in about half an hour. Like, it's a lot, but you know.
I feel like you're like writing the blueprints for some like you're like in the like zone mode or something, which you are in the zone and that's great. And so I'm excited to
Yeah, totally. We've got some people saying hi in the chat. We've got Susanna from Finland, which is
Ooh.
super cool. I have like a crew from Finland that stops in, and there's usually like 4 or 5 people from Finland, which is really cool. And Susanna is a amazing painter, so she is very talented and has a lot of good things to add. We've got Lynn M from New Zealand. Hello, Lynn. Welcome. Scorpio Moon Spirit from Finland and New Zealand. Okay, so we're represented internationally. This is so fun. So thank you all for coming today, and feel free to put some questions in the chat box. I love making these things interactive and hearing how things are going in your life too if you're stopping in on the chat today. Um, so CV, we both kind of just got done. I wanted to touch on this
Yeah.
first of all. We both did various levels of the Northwest Astrology Conference recently, and that was one of my goals today was to maybe talk a little bit about that conference. Not we're not going to spend all day on it, but I think it'd be neat to kind of give people some insight into what it's like being at a conference, maybe some highlights. And I know that you were only able to attend a little bit of it, but I'm still curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I first and foremost, I attended last year and I've attended other astrology conferences this year online, but so this year I attended the first day, Friday. Well, technically it was a pre-conference day Thursday, but whatever. I attended the first full day Friday with the pre-conference and it was wonderful. And I was legitimately like sincerely bummed I couldn't attend the rest because there's just even just the act of like being in my house and feeling like I'm tied to like the astrological world with my computer for days. Usually I go to my friend Williams, we do it together, is like the most glorious thing. um so yeah, I attended the first day. I really enjoyed the lectures I did see, and I'm excited to hear your, like, I feel like I missed all the good gossip, and not like gossip, but like I feel there were like breakout rooms and conversations, and I feel like I missed a lot of the highlights. So I'm excited for you to fill me in.
Yeah, it was my intention going to Norwalk this year was to make some friends. I think that you know, I enjoy the lectures and I enjoy hearing different astrological takes. But I think that the key thing for me was I went into it and said, okay, I'm not going to actually take very many notes. I've done that in the past where I've like been furiously scribbling and like
Yeah.
I don't enjoy the talks and I'm not able to absorb the information in real time. So, you know, I took some notes about things that were sticking out in my mind with the knowledge that we can go back and watch lectures that we want for 2 weeks
Yeah.
in the Norwalk like archives if you sign up for the conference. And then I was just kind of chatting with people, like either sometimes during a lecture, like direct messaging people, but mostly in the breakout rooms and the chat rooms, either between lectures or after the lectures itself in the evenings. And I usually go to bed kind of early, and I was up till 1 or 2 o'clock for 3 days in a row. So it was a lot of connecting. I think I made some good friends. I was able to you know make as deep of a connection as you can make online in a short period of time. I think with a few people, and yeah, it's just neat to see that there are people out on all corners of the world that are interested in this topic and are articulate about it, even if they're not like personalities on social media or on YouTube. There's lots of really skilled people in the world that aren't a really like visible presence, and I really enjoy getting to know those folks as well as the ones that are a more visible presence. So it's it's just neat. It was edifying to me. Um, I really enjoyed my time, and I think that Norwalk in particular is, I think, a really nice conference. It takes place in Seattle, Washington, every year around the end of May, Gemini season,
Mhm.
and it's run by a lady named Laura Nalbandian, who is a very intense Leo rising Capricorn sun, and she's really good at staying organized and doing the hard work to run a conference like that, and also to um, she's very inclusive. Like Norwalk is known for its inclusivity and for making people feel welcome and the diversity that they've been really promoting through the way that they run their conference. So I really appreciate that about the way that they were doing that, and they even had some panels about some hot button topics in the world and also in the astrological world about diversity and about representation and things like that. And those were I had took some really good um, meditations away from those talks as well.
Um, yeah, my experience last year was just how welcoming it was. And it was really impressive that last year, what it was supposed to be live, COVID hit, the whole thing was derailed, and they still managed to like get it up within like, I don't know, a month or something, some really intense timeline. And yeah, I'm really envious. Have you been to Norwalk in person? Because I have not.
No, this was actually my first Norwalk,
Okay.
either in person or virtually. I actually wanted to go last year, but I waited till the last day to
Yeah.
sign up, and I wasn't allowed in. But that's okay. Like I understand. Like it was, I was upset at the time, but I didn't follow the procedure, and I know how difficult it is to run things like this. And this year, I made sure that I signed up a week in advance, so I learned my lesson, and I was able to participate this time. And sometimes things work out, and sometimes they don't. So I'm not holding any grudges. I enjoyed my time this year and was happy to be able to participate and be a part of it. So I see that we've got a few more participants in the chat here. We've got Tarja coming from Finland, who's one of our regular Finland people. And Lisa's checking in from New York. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Tarja. Nice to see you. And she says she hopes to attend an astro conference someday. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. My first astrology conference was just happened to be the biggest astrology conference in the world, the United Astrology Conference in 2018 in Chicago. And that was quite an experience, getting to meet all your astrological heroes. I was new to the astrological world, so I hadn't really met very many people at that point. And that really opened a lot of doors, making connections and getting to know what people are all about and what their energy is, it helped me to want to study with my teacher Achutabhava,
Mhm.
which we are both graduates of his programs now. That's how CV and I met. Isn't it? No, we met at Glock.
No, no, we
No.
were, it's really funny.
Hmm.
I'm still convinced, going back, you have met an ex-boyfriend of mine because he's like a musician. I think you knew his sister from like, what was like a Jeff Buckley cover band or something. Because for whatever reason, I was in Los Angeles when I started studying with Achuta, like early, what that was in 2018, I think. And I saw you on the Zoom and I'm like, I know him. I don't know how I know him, which is so funny. We never talked. And then we actually met in person at Glock. But no, we had been in his
What
classes
was what was
before.
his name? If, or you don't
Christopher,
have to, you don't have
I
to.
don't care. He's
Okay.
on the internet, but like it's not a secret. Christopher Jones, but like that. But Jones was like a given name. He lived in
Okay.
LA forever, and his sister and her husband like moved to Tennessee, and they were musicians.
Okay.
Anyway,
We probably played one of those Buckley tribute shows, right? Maybe in Chicago, like, or Toronto.
for whatever reason, when you came, like when I saw you on the Zoom script, like my first day of class, I remember because I like stayed out late. I just moved to LA, and I was so nervous, and I was like, I know that guy. How do I know him? And maybe it's also too like the time, like right, like time isn't linear. So I knew that I would know you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple more people checking in the chat here. We've got Casey Jones says, "I live in Oregon and really hope to make it up to Norwalk next year." Yeah, so you're right in the right area for that, to be able to maybe even just drive to it without flying. And Jennifer Doherty is here as well. Hello, Jennifer. Um, yeah, the interesting thing about Norwalk, I would
Yeah.
say, is a conference can be very expensive. I was
Mhm.
very lucky at UAC to be able to get. I got a full conference scholarship from one of the astrological organizations. One,
Yeah.
it was called AFAN, which is the Association for Astrological Networking. And I
Yeah.
applied for a scholarship and was able to receive the funds to go. And my mom also lives in Chicago, so I had a place to stay, and
Okay.
it was only 4 hours away. So it, right away, I got a scholarship for the conference. I had a place to stay, so I didn't have to buy a hotel,
Yeah.
and I didn't have to buy a plane ticket. And those costs can add up to, over $1,000.
Absolutely.
So the great thing about Norwalk this year is digitally, we were able to attend for a couple $100 without
Mhm.
having to pay for a plane or for a hotel. And that made it accessible to a lot more people. And I think that's something to think about moving forward with conferences. Nothing really beats the in real life experience, but sometimes that experience isn't always feasible for everybody, because you're going to be spending upwards of, $1,000 to $1,500 just to get there. So
It's interesting now, and I'd love to have people in the chat respond. But like, I feel that, I started studying astrology like, the last 3-4 years, whatnot. And like, especially since COVID, I had this wonderful opportunity where I truly feel so many of my good friends don't live near me. Like I live in Detroit. You're the closest one to me, and you're, a couple hours away, hour, 45 minutes or something like this. But most of my friends are spread out, and they're astrologers, right? My astrologer, like people really, really close to me over this year. And I'm wondering now, like, because it's so interesting, because like I have this opportunity to meet people all over the world, like going to astrology conferences, I can't wait. It's going to be so exciting. But even just making smaller meetups, like now when I go to New York, I hang out with my astrology friend, or I went to Houston or whatever, right? Like this ability, specifically during COVID, of being able to connect, but also really foster these connections. So I think that's the beautiful thing, is that like these things don't necessarily end online. We
that's
can
true.
go out and meet each other.
We've greased the wheels of friendship.
Mhm.
These things, right? Yeah, that's a great point, CV, because it is hard to kind of break the ice sometimes when you're trying to establish relationships.
Yeah.
And if you can even like begin that process through like something like an online conference, that can carry over into those in-person meetups. And I know that you and I have met up in person with like classes and some astro meetups and things like that. And I think that that's something that it's important to try to organize and facilitate those things in your local area too.
Mhm.
We had a local conference here, the Great Lakes Astrology Conference, that we were able to meet at. And I hope that there will be things like that in the future, especially for Midwesterners, because there's conferences on the West Coast. There's like things in Denver and probably East Coast and things like that. But I really do think there's a need for people who live in the Midwest to be able to come together as well. And I don't think there's going to be a Great Lakes Astrology Conference this year. I think they canceled it because I don't know if they were able to do it online or something of that nature, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But we didn't really get a proper introduction from you either, CV. Tell us a little bit more about your background with astrology and what kind of things you're working on. And I know you have an astrologically based business as well. So
Yeah, so I guess I'm a writer first and foremost, and I came to astrology at a really interesting time. I had just left a business and I was focusing on writing. I just started a writing job, journalistic thing, and I don't know. It's like I found astrology to be this really like beautiful way of connecting with people. So and it's just, I don't know, like everyone, I'm sure with you too, right? It's completely changed. It's hard to say. Like I feel like I do birth consultations, right? And even like thinking about my own writing, even though not all of it's astrological, I feel like so much of my life has been like sort of shaped by astrology. It feels like a language that I speak, that I'm learning to speak, that just feels really good when I do it. But yeah, I think I'm like kind of subtler about my practice. So I have like an Instagram. I go under the moniker Art of the Zodiac. I think a lot about using astrological language in sort of other applications. So like thinking about it in terms of art, or like thinking about it in terms, like it's a lens I'm always going through, even if I'm writing like an essay or an article or something that's having things to do with about astrology. There's sort of always that lens. So yeah, Art of the Zodiac. I have an Instagram. You can follow me. We can talk astrology. I do birth chart consultations, and I also make apothecary, which is something I do sort of like so low key. Like I have a brand, but it's just like, yeah, I'm super into making things specifically just for individuals, the same way you read a chart. So
totally.
it was a very long-winded introduction.
And you're a great interviewer as well. I've come onto your channel on Instagram for a few Instagram lives, and I think that you really have a lot of skill with being able to connect with a diverse range of people that I've seen on your channel as well. How is that something you've cultivated? Like where do you attribute that skill to?
Well, before COVID, for the last 2 years, I spent just interviewing people. I was working for an online publication. And before that, I was interested in interviews. I actually had a restaurant, which, right, it's a different sort of interview because you're just talking to all different people all the time, all kinds of people. So yeah, that it's something I'm definitely engaged with and fascinated by. And I hope that I'm getting better through years of doing it. Oh, you went mute for a minute. What'd you say?
And you have a Gemini moon, right?
I do. Yeah, in the 11th house.
And we Leo rise out here. We're both Leo ascendants. So
yeah, something too, right? Like recently I realized I have an absurd amount of Leo rising friends.
Yeah.
Are we like the lion pack or something?
It might be. That's what we should call it. The feline pack. I think what it is, when you get Leo risings together or Leo suns, it's kind of like, you're great. No, you're great. No, you're amazing. And that's like exactly what we need and want to be able to do. We want to be able to lift people up and also like, feel appreciaed. Mm-hmm. And so it's this mutual admiration society when you get a lot of Leos together. They're like, yay.
And I feel like there's a bit of like, yeah, let's do it. You're great. I'm great. Let's go. Like,
yes, exactly.
I wonder if anyone in the chat can relate to us. So if you have Leo placements, please talk to us. Spencer can see. I cannot.
Yeah, we've got Tarja saying, as a European, I love the online conferences. I would have attended Norwalk, but we had a move, so we didn't have time or money. Yeah, and like those flights aren't cheap. That's what I'm saying. Like it's a big outlay of an expense. Lisa is laughing at us. She has one Leo placement, I think. I'm not going to give away too much here. They can give it away if they want.
Yeah.
We have a lot of what do we have? in our chats here. We have some Piscean folks. We have some Cancerians. There's always a lot of Virgo type people that follow my channel because of those 2 pages of crazy notes I sent you. Like, so,
Mhm.
aligning light astrology says Leo seventh house. Let's all tell each other how great we are. Yes, exactly. Susanna says just Mercury and Leo, so she's on the train too.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's start diving into the astrology of the month. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it. Are
So
we
we've
gonna
got,
pull a chart, pull some notes?
yeah. I'll pull up the. Thank you for reminding me. I'll pull up the chart of the moment here,
Okay.
and I'm gonna go back to June 1st, and let's just kind of take let's hit the major points as we go kind of day by day here through this. I just wanted to start out by saying that I think that what we're experiencing overall is we are between eclipses right now, which we can call a liminal space or a Bardo period, where we're getting this energetic shakeup, where you know we're really trying to um, shed some old skin and be able to make a new start. But there's a lot of confusion that can happen when you're leaving the past behind and the new thing has not fully coalesced yet. And I think that that's really what we're seeing in June for the most part, is a desire to move forward, but a need to be able to hold some of the ambiguity and not having all the answers yet. So I think that that's kind of the overall theme I'm seeing. Do you have any thoughts about general themes as well?
Okay, this is because I'm a generalist.
Sure.
Um, I was just thinking when you're talking about eclipse season, and what came to mind, two things came to mind. One, how Adam Summer calls it like the space between the dragon hole.
Hmm.
I think I'm getting that right. But also, I was just thinking recently how like having a relationship to eclipse season specifically, but astrology at large is such a wonderful way to feel connected with your life. When I think of eclipses, eclipse season in particular, it's the kind of thing where like, you can look back at like 3 years ago or something in your life. You can look back at a period of time and suddenly like you're like, how did I get here? But having this understanding of astrology is to really understand the nuances in our life, to see where the seeds are being planted, and just to have almost a little more control over that. Not that we have a control over eclipse season, but you can go, oh, I planted that seed then, and then that turned to that. And then I can now make these choices. And my life isn't just like things happening to me. But specifically eclipse season, I feel like it's always a time where you don't quite know how it's playing out in the moment, but it all kind of shakes out afterwards. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, connecting the dots, right? Kind of
Yeah.
like a web of fate that you're weaving, like a spider. A spider's been associated with fate in the past as an animal symbol. I think that, yeah, we're planting seeds. Think about it too. When you were one thought that came up when I was hearing you speak was, what do eclipses naturally do?
Mhm.
They throw the light into darkness. So there is this sense of we are, you know, having maybe some doubt. We're shutting off knowledge or awareness of something and being cast into this state of unknowing, of not knowing.
Yeah.
And yeah, the dragon hole. I like that. I like the way that Adam Summer describes that, because it does feel like we're kind of in this dark cave and we're ready. We're trying to feel our way through a dark space that we don't necessarily have a map to yet, and we're going to get little clues here and there,
Mhm.
and we have to kind of take notes, because the clues that we're going to be given are going to play out over the course of the next 6 months, over the course of the next, I don't know what the meta cycle is, like 18 years or something like that. So there are all these like concentric, Russian doll type circles that we're connecting back towards. And I think the way that I explore this time is, I don't necessarily feel like I have to take any specific action during this period of time. I'm just taking notes and I'm letting life present to me the synopsis of the new chapter of the book that we're going to be reading, basically.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And I feel like specific, yes, and then double that. with Mercury's retrograde.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I mean, if we do like a little audit of what the planets are doing right now, we've got the sun. I think the way I want to break this down today
Okay.
is talk about the sun in particular decans and all the aspects that are going to be, or the important aspects that are going to be happening
Okay.
during that solar 10, roughly 9 to 10 day period. And we start out the month here with the sun moving through the second decan of Gemini. Um, that decan is called the Hermaphrodite by Austin Coppock.
Mm.
And it's really about holding ambiguity and duality. CV is really good at tarot as well. So we have like the Nine of Swords card that we are looking at to give us some of the themes that, like the canvas that we're going to be painting on. And this has just moved forward from this feeling of being bound by many, many options that we see in the first decan of Gemini, the first 10-degree section.
Mm.
So we've been presented with many options. And now it's kind of like this weighing and balancing. And how can we reconcile all of these things that may not actually be uh, completely related to one another, or even be able to be blended seamlessly without certain choices having to be made. I really been talking about on this channel that Gemini season is about tasting and exploring and getting some insight into multiple pathways, but ultimately for the purpose of making a choice and letting go of one particular path to be able to fuse life into the chosen path. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, um, I was listening to a micro lecture yesterday. Someone talking about Gemini. Is it Colin Bedell? Is that his name?
Yeah, he was at Norwalk.
Okay. Like I think I stumbled across something he was saying. And this idea of Gemini also too, like there's a choice, but also there's this like kind of how in dialogue, there's this idea of synthesis too, of
Mhm.
like figuring out how to take these disparate parts and sort of forging a new way, right? Thesis, antithesis.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, because we think about Mercury as having that kind of hopeful expression in Gemini as well,
Mm-hmm.
because of it being in a diurnal, sanguine air sign, right? It's about the expansion of these possibilities. Whereas if we contrast that with the Virgo expression of Mercury, we're examining things so that we can pare it down, right? And I think both, there's very similar um, energies as far as like examination. But I think that the end goal is slightly different. I think Mercury's transit through Gemini is more about um, what are we going to breathe life into, and Gemini, I'm sorry, Virgo Mercury is more about what are we going to preserve against death? What are we going to preserve against the ravage of time, and what are we going to return to the earth? Although there are similar themes in both because of the sacrifice that happens
Mm-hmm.
at the solstice, the sun sacrifice, where we have to let go of one option to fuse life into another one. So we have Mercury retrograde right now.
Yeah.
It is under the beams of the sun. So Mercury is going through its underworld psychopomp journey, uh, looking in those liminal spaces, in those internal spaces, to be able to find new information. It's an old Mercury right now. This is a very old Mercury. So we may be reflecting upon the past and getting ready to discard things to make a new start when Mercury goes Kazemi at the new moon solar eclipse. So that's what Mercury's doing. We've got Jupiter in Pisces, going through the first decan of Pisces, where we're getting kind of that Eight of Cups energy, right? Where the labyrinth, we're going off in search of meaning. How's your experience of Jupiter and Pisces been so far?
I'm still trying to like in my personal life, I'm still sort of trying to suss it out. But I am sort of fascinated by like the larger topics, like thinking about even like something I'm actually just quoting other astrologers right now, but like how like Anne Ortley pointed out that like when Jupiter went into Pisces, we all sort of took our masks off, and even the whole like fresh in my mind because I was listening to the astrology podcast before this, like the whole sort of themes of like extraterrestrials and that like what coupled with yesterday's news that Venus what is it like, it's been declared that we're going to go spend more time on Venus, or we're going to make a trip to Venus. Anyway, all these sort of like really sort of wild I feel like otherworldly, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're all just trying, it's like, whoa, like we're on this something, like we just took this like trip together. We're like, but what does it mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you on that. I think that almost the day that Jupiter ingressed into Pisces, I was like, what am I doing? And I need to just take a big giant step back from what I'm doing to find the animating purpose and principle. And I stopped doing my individual decan videos for the most part, and really have been kind of doing a lot of meditation on what I want to create with like this channel, or just with my own life and my own studies and things like that. What I was finding while Jupiter was in Aquarius was I was grinding, I was grinding out content. It had become routine and rote, and I think that there was some good that was done with it. And I have really connected with a lot of people through this channel, and I've received a lot of great support from the people here. But the question was, how do we keep it fresh, not just for the audience, but for the person creating it as well, right? And what I wanted to do was, I was feeling more about what was I enjoying about this. And what I really enjoy is actually just communicating and connecting with people, and I was feeling like I was howling into the void on some level. But again, I think this is why we're experimenting with this today. Is I really enjoy the interaction, the feedback, and we have that with each other, and we have that with people in the chat. The live streams were something that were always giving me life. I really love hearing people's responses in real time here. So I've been, really considering how that all fits together and whatnot. So I've been hearing from a lot of people too that they have been taking a step back from external action in life and searching for what motivates them. I think it's an internal motivation type of transit.
It's when you were talking, this sort of vision came to me, that because we did have this conversation early on, because it's sort of the same thing happened to me. Like I suddenly felt like the things I was doing, like why, like asking all these whys. And I just sort of had this sort of vision that it felt like when Jupiter went into Pisces, that suddenly we were all like dropped into the ocean. And it was like this slowing down where you're just kind of like looking around, like, let me take a moment to like look around and like ask myself these questions. And it's like kind of like harder to talk down here, and things feel like slower and heavier. That was my visual.
Yeah. And the ocean is a great metaphor, I think, for Pisces, because it is this sign of depth. It is this place of, it maybe even isn't even slightly a natural place for us. It's this strange place where there's mystery involved with it. There's there's all these things happening underneath the surface that we can't even see, and there's some danger in that, but there's also some great beauty. If you've seen some of those like Blue Planet, nature documentaries or something like that, there's all these wonderful interplays of light and dark and interesting animals and fish and plants. And it's just like, whoa, there's this whole different world I wasn't even aware of there, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing, right? We've been like sort of on this surface thinking like a very mechanical way, like I know I'm going through these things. And suddenly like we're dropped into the depths, and like even like the sun, like, we see the sun coming in weird ways, and we suddenly realize this has been here all along, but we don't recognize it, that there has been this other layer that on which things operate that we're now suddenly having to confront. That's
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, in 36 Faces, Austin talks about the sign of Pisces sort of having to do with kind of like the second decan he describes as a net, where it's almost like the Matrix, where it's the unwritten or unspoken rules of creation. Think about Jupiter as the demiurge that wants to create from the blueprint that maybe a planet like Saturn would provide, like the
Mhm.
idealistic Platonic forms, but Jupiter is begetting all of these things. And it's kind of this awareness that we are working simultaneously with unseen spiritual forces
Mhm.
and physical rules that we have to work within, and
Mhm.
bringing those into alignment, because Jupiter harmonizes things. It brings integrity and peace and the order. It actually is a planet of order and of structure. I think that's one of the kind of secret meanings that really comes out from studying traditional astrology, is Jupiter really is about ordering your world.
Yeah.
And we do that by drawing upon the inner vision and helping it to match the external vision. And I would say one of the things with Jupiter in the first decan of Pisces is the initial experience might be a sense of dissatisfaction. This is a Saturn ruled decan where you might say, my inner reality does not match up with my external reality. The inner desire is not matching up with the outer expression. And you begin the journey of trying to synthesize those two when you're going through that Pisces, I don't know, like walkabout, something like that, right?
The last thing to say on this, well, I'll say just um that you've pointed out to me, and it was such like a like expansive mind opener, that Aquarius is like, I'm now, every time I think of Aquarius energy, I think about, right, like being in a plane and looking down. It's like the above ground. So we think like in the clouds, we're looking down, like this is the view. I'm thinking about too, right, like signs next to each other, they can't see each other. So in a sense, though, we go from being up here to sunlight goes into Pisces and we're just plunged underwater. And
Yeah.
that is totally discombobulating. We might feel like we're drowning. Like, where are we? But there's also something really beautiful, because usually what like Jupiter would just go like there, we don't necessarily have the opportunity to experience these things together, right? There's no aspect between them, right? Like a trine or a square, something like this. So
Right.
the fact that like Jupiter gets to like like go forward and then it's gonna like retrograde back, it's gonna be like this really, I feel, opportune time to consciously think about marrying those two energies or perspectives.
Well, we get to come up for air for a little while,
Yeah.
don't we? Right?
Uh-huh.
We get to
Uh-huh. That's a
breathe.
great one.
Yeah, right. It's like the flying fish jumping out of the water. It's like, oh, here I am again. Excuse me, before we get plunged right back into the depths for a few months afterwards. Okay, so that's a good talk about Jupiter here. We've got Mars moving through Cancer for the beginning of the month. That's been a little bit of a difficult transit. We won't spend too much time on that, but I've heard a lot of friends that, and I personally have been going through some stuff with Mars and Cancer where we may have some disruptions for things that might have brought us nurturing, or where we came to expect support, and we may be separated from those things on some level. And we have an opposition with Pluto by whole sign that it's going to be perfecting over the course of the next few days as well. So, do you have any quick thoughts on that?
Help.
What's that?
Help. I don't know.
Help. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. I'm over it. Just a little like Mercury retrograde, Mars Cancer story. I have a leaky tub right now,
Yeah.
and I had to wait like 3 weeks for the plumber to even come to the house to look at it, and they got here, and I was like, oh, finally, I'm gonna get the tub's gonna get fixed. It's in like the feng shui area of my house that has to do with like relationship to the public. And I was like, all
Yeah.
right, now all my chi is going to stop draining down the drain. But then they were like, oh, your pipes are so old that we're going to have to shut the water off from, but the city's going to have to shut the water off from the street. And we can't schedule that until the end of June. And I was like, oh boy. So it's just like Mercury retrograde, Mars still in Cancer. And it's just like, you have to wait for these things to be resolved on some level. So And that, in addition, I've been talking about on this channel, someone drove into my fence, into my yard, and there's been all sorts of, little family squabbles here and there too. So I'm ready for that to be over with. Although I will say, once Mars moves out of Cancer and into Leo, it's going to move directly into an opposition with Saturn in Aquarius. So I don't know how much relief that's actually going to bring, because that's going to be a really challenging aspect over the course of the summer. Okay, so let's. What else did we? We've got Saturn in Aquarius that just recently retrograded. So maybe some. We've been releasing some limitations. I think we've been people have been rejoining society and removing some of the barriers between them and other people, like physically, like not wearing masks as much as anymore, like with a new CDC recommendation, people rejoining and things of that nature. I'll have to admit, I'm still a little uncomfortable with some of that stuff because I know that, Jupiter's going to be retrograding back into Aquarius, but I guess I'm trying to figure out how to move forward and I guess heal from the trauma of the pandemic and the trauma of being in a heightened sense of anxiety for over a year. And I wonder if you have any insights into that.
Of proceed with caution, insights into that part of it.
Yeah. Or healing from the collective trauma that we've experienced throughout this.
Yeah. I would say that, I don't know, it feels like it's interesting. Maybe it's just me and I'm super nostalgic. My like Mercury and Pisces can't always see things with clarity. But I mean, just in general, right? Like I feel too right now, like it feels like in some ways, like COVID was such, what is it called? Like when you're like in such a bad position, but you grow like you're captured or something, that you have sort of like fond, you sort of, you still don't want to move on. You have these sort of fond memories, right? Like it feels a
Like
little,
Stockholm syndrome.
yeah. Like it's interesting now, like suddenly like we're coming for air and like we're looking around, and on one hand, like we expect the world to be as it was before COVID, and it's not. And that like we're also maybe used to like our little nests that we're now being pushed out of, like go back. And then like for me, like everyone I know is moving, right? I think that's the big moving energy right now.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of weird feeling where it feels a little hungover. You're like, do we proceed? We kind of like, oh, we kind of like liked being in our houses, but like what it feels is very, I mean, I guess that's sort of too like, maybe there's Neptune with all of this and like the eclipses, but it feels very uncertain. It feels like I don't even know how to start healing because I don't quite know where I want to be.
Yeah, when we have a Mercury Neptune square that is still active right now. So the details and the clarity of information is probably difficult to come by.
Mm-hmm.
And just a preview of what the I-Ching was speaking of is
Yeah.
I-Ching is preaching patience for this month in particular. I pulled an animal for this month, and the animal was the sloth. So it's like not forcing the river, moving at your own pace.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, that's been my approach is to go slow, and slow and steady wins the race. All right, so we've got Mars, we did Jupiter, we did Mercury. We just briefly talked about the Mercury Neptune square. We've still got Uranus grinding its way through Taurus. It's going to be making a square with Saturn, so we'll get to that in a minute. And then Venus is going to be moving into Cancer. It is in Cancer at this point as we speak. And then we will see it dip into Leo towards the end of the month. So Venus in Cancer is kind of a nice thing. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah.
So today's Thursday, June the 3rd. We're getting a little bit of a later start on the June forecast here, but that's the way I roll. I'm always a little late with stuff, but blame my retrograde Mercury in my own chart. So we're starting out with Venus in Cancer over the beginning of the month here. I really think that this may be helping to smooth out some of the Mars and Cancer issues that we've been dealing with in the domestic spheres, bringing maybe the beginning of some solutions and the beginning of some good fortune to some of those challenges that Mars is bringing up in Cancer. We also are experiencing today a very nice Venus-Jupiter trine, which is a really beautiful aspect. We've got Jupiter in the overcoming trine to Venus here. And
Mm,
I guess the way this is manifesting for me so far is just having you here as a guest and
yeah.
having this nice conversation and having a, the Venus is the Two of Cups card, right? With the first decan of Cancer. So you see the two exchanges of
Yeah.
energy, the union of body and soul. Do you have any or Venus Jupiter thoughts?
Venus, Jupiter thoughts. Um, I mean, I was just my focus, right? Because we were talking about the Mars in my brain sort of stuck there, but I was like,
Sure.
it's so lovely that now suddenly this like Venus is kind of behind, like, I'm gonna help put the pieces back together that Mars just like pulled everything apart. And then, and Jupiter's helping with that. It's like like team benefic, like trying to like, clean up the rubble that is Mars and Cancer.
Yeah, I like that because Venus is trying to bring together things that had been separated.
Yeah.
They were opposite energies when Mars is separating things that maybe belong together. So it'll be a little bit of a relief, I think, getting Venus into this sign. And the Jupiter trine is that's a beautiful aspect. I think one thing I've been thinking about with this
Mhm.
aspect is
Yeah.
being able to rest and like really just start to feel our feelings and get in touch with the emotional, seeing beauty again. This is an aspect I think where we can see a lot of beauty manifest in our life. And I'm looking in the chat here, and we have some cool comments here. I'm going to go down here for just a second. A lighting light astrology says, I struggle with patience with the time it takes to coalesce different skills or life things into coherence, like Sag, or being comfortable not resolving the disparate parts like Gemini. Yeah, that's another thing we've been going through recently is trying to release old belief systems with this South Node in Sagittarius and
Yeah.
maybe hold disparate narratives with the North Node in Gemini. Lisa says Gemini is all about back and forth conversation. Yeah, one of the things I think that you realize with Gemini over time is it's not just about talking. It's just as much about listening and being able to hear the alternative perspective. Lisa says all the Leo people singing "What's my motivation?" LOL. Yeah, that's true. Lynn says that they are a Leo ascendant. So welcome, fellow Leo crew. Like, what should we call our club again? The
You called it the feline club. I was like the line.
Simba's Pride or something like that. I don't know. The Pride. This is the Pride, the Leo Pride. Um, aligning light astrology says Mars and Leo is going to be a spicy boy time. Oh yes, it probably will be. Us Leo ascendants here are going to feel that for sure with Mars moving into our first house. Casey Jones says I'm moving, and I know lots of others who are too. So piggybacking off of what CV was saying with shakeups, right?
Yeah.
New shakeup of energy. And one or two more comments here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Susanna says, I've got Venus at 2 degrees Cancer on the descendant, Jupiter return, trine, Jupiter. Yeah, definitely. As a Cat Moon rising in Cancer Sun, I welcome the watery blessings before I get hit by Mars Pluto opposition. Yep. Yeah, I feel you on that, Susanna. I'm a little nervous about the weekend, but we'll hopefully we'll provide some guidance with that. And then Lisa says Mars does the surgery and Venus comes in to sew it up. I love that.
Yes, that's
Yes.
perfect.
Good way of tying a bow on that, Lisa, because I like that. We're removing the obstruction and then repairing it, right? Sort of like maybe removing a tumor or something of that nature, right? And now we're in the healing process after the psychic surgery. Okay, so we're still on the third here. We have the Venus Jupiter trine, which is a beautiful aspect, nurturing a dream, finding support for your vision, emotional or intuitive gifts, finding harmony in relationships. We do have another important aspect that is perfecting today, and that is I'm going to erase this trine for a second, all this jigsaw jazz. We do have a trine happening between the Sun and Saturn. So another harmonious aspect of the nature of Jupiter, right? Because of the kind of the relationship in the thema mundi or the natal chart of the world. And we've gone over that in previous videos here on the channel, so I won't spend too much time on that. But Sun Saturn, right? We've got the sun in that ambiguous place, that mercurial Gemini house where we're exploring, casting doubt, holding dualities. And we've got Saturn retrograding in a decan associated with the Six of Swords, which shows two figures that are on a boat traveling between worlds, right? Being ferried to from the old into the new. It's that transition period, like you were talking about, all these people that are moving, right? So we're moving on from the past and into a new experience. And to me, I think this is really just speaking to accepting the reality of the duality and the contradictions, of accepting that there will be some questions that don't necessarily have answers right now, and exploring some of the, but maybe even potentially the new social constraints or the new social contracts that we want to establish as a greater collective. Any feedback on that?
Just just the juxtaposition of these two trines happening these two trines happening in the sky makes me think of, right, like still in sort of the backdrop that we're in this sort of reflective Mercury retrograde moment. Like I feel like the sky is very dynamic. You have this sort of combustible air, which is just this sort of shake up energy, but then there's this sort of underwater, right? We're talking about that Jupiter and Pisces, thinking about, again, we're plunged underwater, right? Making the conversation with the Venus. So it, to me, like the juxtaposition is really like, there's this like insight that's on like, oh, like I sort of like emotionally feel like I have an insight that maybe is aligned with something intellectually. Like we're getting these sort of like really good insights, but I feel like not, it's still a really good moment to like listen to them and feel like these are things that are going to make sense later, or they're like insights that will help us move forward. Because again, with Mercury retrograde, I wouldn't like act on all of this right now, but it feels like a very pregnant time to be getting some really nice quality insights and visions to our direction in life.
I love the idea of Gemini being pregnant with possibility.
Yeah.
Think about like Gemini is on the 12th house of the Thema Mundi, and it was the time before birth at the ascendant, where Cancer was on the ascendant of the Thema Mundi.
Yeah.
And 12th house was also associated with childbed or labor. So we're going through these kind of labor pains, and we're going through this like, accumulating of tidbits of facts and splitting the cells in a way that we're creating form, right? We're dividing cells, and through that division, we are creating a more complex being. We're creating a more complex version that is eventually going to be fused into a body, a more complex mental construct or spirit that then will be nurtured through that birth and into the body, which I think is super neat.
Absolutely. It just occurred to me, like thinking about that, the thesis and the antithesis of like how you make a baby, right? You negotiate to like the male parts and the female parts to create this new life form.
Right. Yeah. Perfect.
Whoa.
Okay. So that's the third, when the Sun Saturn trine, sobriety. If we move forward to the fifth, we're moving through, a last quarter into a balsamic moon phase. So we're the moon is releasing its light and getting darker to get to the new moon solar eclipse that we're building to on the 10th. We do have one of the hits of the Mercury retrograde square Neptune on the 5th. So that's going to be happening in addition to the Mars opposition to Pluto. So that day looks a little sticky, doesn't it? This is what, Sunday? That's some stuff right there.
Saturday. It's my boyfriend's birthday.
Oh boy. So that's baked into his chart for the year, huh? Right? So fun for him. So some of the things I've written down, maybe difficulty getting clarity around a choice that needs to be made. Mercury in the third decan of Gemini is associated with the 10 of Swords. And that is the resolution of the story of the two twins, where one twin was immortal and one was mortal, and one died, and the other had to give up some of their immortality so that the other could live again. So this coincides with building to the summer solstice, where we will have to make a sacrifice of some of the imagined pathways to be able to breathe life into something else. And I think that there may be some confusion about which thing should be released and which thing should be fused life into. Austin Coppock calls that decan the executioner's sword. so fuzzy details, right? Confusion, maybe reviewing some of your idealistic visions, which has something to do with the third decan of Pisces, where we're willing to sacrifice for our ideals. That was a Mars ruled decan, so there's almost like a martyr energy around that decan. So I would say be careful that you're not sacrificing for an ideal that isn't able to be manifested. I think it's really important to stay grounded and to, run your ideas by your most practical friend before acting upon them. I don't even think it's the time to act upon things in general. Would you agree with that? I mean, you think you've stated that today.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then Mars, Pluto, that one, in my notes, I have written down violent emotions potentially surfacing, potential themes of like abduction, which are associated with Pluto. Pluto or Hades would erupt from the underworld to abduct Persephone or other things that they were desiring. I think that there may be some conflicts over the home structure with some corruption potentially revealed, right? So we're being separated from that which is bringing us nurturing, and it's bringing up a lot of deep buried feelings that need to be dealt with. I always think of Pluto as the clogged toilet. And we're going to think about like this. You've got a really nasty clogged toilet and you're going to war with it. And you've got like the plunger and you're like, I'm going to plunge this thing. But you may just get covered in shit. That may be the result of what happens with this at some level. What do you think?
I'm just looking at him like, man, it's no, I don't want to say. I was like, it's nasty. It's particularly feel difficult because like it's okay. Pluto, Mars is like not the easiest, but it's in Cancer, so it's just like I don't know. I'm sort of. I think I'm there with you. These themes of sort of abduction. I feel like this could be like sort of an emotionally volatile surfacing. And I feel like Pluto's like hard reality to some extent. Like I feel like there could be some sort of physical component to all of this.
Yeah. I guess I would preach taking a timeout if you need it. I think that Pluto contacts, especially with Mars. I heard Alan White, who was a really interesting Hellenistic astrologer, who was part of that Project Hindsight group with Schmidt and Zoller and all that. I heard him describe Pluto as nuclear fusion and nuclear fission, where it could blow something small into something very big, or it can minimize something very big into something small. So I think that there's potential for the issues, the discontent and the anger issues that may be bubbling below the surface in our domestic spheres to be very much blown the doors off of over the weekend if we aren't conscious of of our actions and of our responses to things that may be creating conflict. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just give everybody extra space. Ask questions rather than making declarative statements, because you may not have all the details with Mercury squared Neptune at this period of time. A lot of the conflict may be coming directly from misunderstandings. And one of the things I like to use are the four agreements, right? And one of the four agreements is don't make assumptions, ask questions, and use your word for good. Be true to your integrity, things of those nature. Um, but yeah, I think this is time for questions rather than declarative statements. Sometimes when we make declarative statements in the heat of battle, it's really hard to walk those back, and we may not necessarily mean it, but the damage has been done. So that would be a caution that I would throw out there as well. All right, I'm looking through the chat. Tarya says it's womb time. Yes, I like that. Womb time. Loop Goat is here. They
Hi,
say, hi,
Lupo.
friends. Yeah, you know Loop Goat. Loop Goat joins us on Instagram. Lisa is saying the movie Crash, where people rush to judgment and it costs people their lives. Yeah, exactly. It's an important time not to rush into a judgment. Casey Jones says, my home has already been very hostile since Mars moved into Cancer. I feel like I am being forced to take action even though I am not ready and options are limited. Yeah, I mean, again, I think as much as you can diffuse those conflicts without necessarily having to commit one way or another, I think is positive. I know we in my family, we had a little family like meeting, a little like
Yeah.
get together, a little session where we really had to air some grievances and come to terms with figuring out what people's conflicting needs were. And
Yeah.
once we really understood where each other were coming from and what we needed, it was a lot easier to provide solutions that would work for people. And a lot of the things that had been building up is because a lot of that went unexpressed. And I think that that's the thing. Like that's what Pluto is doing here. It's pushing all that thing below the surface so that eventually it does have to be dealt with, though. It is going to emerge or erupt like Hades does, from that underworld into the surface. Two more comments here. Deborah Donaldson, welcome, Deborah, says, sounds like it's going to be a fun birthday for me on the 5th. Oh boy, Deborah, you and
Yeah.
Stevie's boyfriend are
And a member of our astrology group from last night. I don't want to say people's names.
Oh yeah. Got another fellow Gemini that is going to be having a fun solar return chart. Um, Aligning light astrology, curiosity and compassion. Yes, I agree. Asking questions and holding space for people. Remember, the real part of Gemini is not just expressing your opinion, but holding space for others to do so as well. Tarya says, my sister has her birthday the 5th and my daughter the 6th. Well, good luck, Tarya. You're gonna have some Gemini energy where they're going to be probably going through some challenging times.
You're in good company, though,
That's
because
good, Cody.
we're pulling out all the June 5th people, apparently.
Yeah. A dynamic birthday, to be sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move forward to the 10th because we have some pretty important astrology happening on the 10th. Any questions from people in the chat here? We've got some great comments. We've got people checking in here. Some nice interactions. I'll keep my eye out on that. But on the 10th, we are going to be experiencing a new moon solar eclipse. So I'm going to actually go right to the moment of that eclipse and see. Let's go back here. There it is. So here we see the new moon solar eclipse, which is a conjunction of the sun and the moon on one of the nodes. Yep. So here we see it's on the north node of Gemini at about 10 degrees of Gemini. The north node being on the fixed star Aldebaran, which is associated with integrity. Lots of issues with integrity and being able to do the right thing, even if someone's not, watching. And this is at 19 degrees Gemini, so the very end of that second decan where we're going to be asked to hold duality. We also are going to be seeing Mercury making a cazimi that same day. Now that cazimi will happen in Gemini 3, which is that 10 of Swords energy. So new moon eclipses, right? We just recently had a full moon eclipse where we were letting go of old narratives with the moon conjoining the south node in Sagittarius, right? Where we were saying, okay, this story isn't serving me anymore. The dragon's tail is like, a disembodied head that's crapping out old stuff. That's kind of how I think of that. And here we've got the dragon's head, which is hungry. So there is a hunger for new experience. There's a hunger for exploration. There's a hunger for exploring multiple paths or disparate elements, and maybe trying to unify them on some level too, eventually. So, what do you think about this solar eclipse, CV?
I'm still, of course, I always try to think of it like in my like personal life of how sort of I'm experiencing these things. And, you know, it doesn't make sense quite to say that there's going to be a clarity around this. Um, but I don't know. I just think of this energy of like maybe like somewhat of pushing us in a new direction, if that makes sense at all.
Oh,
Right.
definitely. Yeah.
Like that's going to be the thing where we look back and like, oh, okay, that's where this was going. But I'm not quite sure if it's going to like all jump us like, like on the day I'm going to jump in our faces. I
Yeah.
can speak really, I can. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because it is hosted by Mercury,
Mhm.
also really kind of joining in that exact same space.
Yeah.
I would say that it's a strong moment for Mercury because the Kazemi moment is the Mercury being infused with new purpose, with new awareness, with new information. So I really think it's important for people to really pay attention to the messages that they are receiving around this period of time, because I think it could have wide reaching ramifications for the next story of your life. And really pay attention to the Gemini house, and also the Virgo house, because they are going to be related. They're going to be, those two narratives are interwoven like that spider web that we were talking about beforehand. Um, yeah, I mean, us Leo ascendants is kind of the Leo rising show. It's a new start in our 11th house of groups, right? Where we've been discussing kind of a new kind of meetup group that we are arranging on some level and trying to figure out some of the way that that would work and how that would, sort of the expectations for that as well. Um, and and here we are doing something new with like interacting with the public as well. So we'll see. Do you have anything in the hopper as far as like 11th house things in your life, CV?
Yeah. I'm, you know, I have the first thing that comes to mind is there was um I started actually last year after Norwalk an astrological writers group, which you're part of.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really thinking about reconfiguring that to focus more on writing and being more workshop and oriented and kind of taking it to the next level so it feels more engaging for people. And I've been really like, I kind of like when it's funny going back here, when Jupiter went to Pisces, I had this strong feeling to hold back, like we need to change this. And now I'm like starting to like feel like, oh, this is where it could go. And I've been really hesitant to start to assign the first meeting because I'm like, I don't know, this feels like, do I wait till Mercury goes direct? Do I wait till after the Kazemi? Like, so maybe I responded with a bit of a question for you, like what are your thoughts on like acting on something like, again, we're getting that sort of Jupiter sort of bringing these ideas, but it has been a sort of volatile weather.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what is beginning here is exactly what you stated, the beginning of asking a question. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's the beginning of holding duality. It's the beginning of exploration that eventually will lead to choices. But what I think that is important for people to recognize is that you don't have to have all the answers on the new moon. This is something that's going to unfold over many weeks and many months, potentially maybe even many years. So I think that if you become present rather than getting flustered by imagining all of the possibilities,
Yeah.
that
Oh my
the
God.
answer will be, yeah, it'll be revealed, right? I think it's about paying attention.
I feel we just had the Gemini conversation, right? Because I was like, do I hold off because there's so many ways for this to go? But part of it is like, no, you can't put your life on hold, right? Like you do the thing with the understanding that like maybe also too, like we could say this Gemini takeaway, a little bit of the synthesis happens in actually making the thing,
Yeah,
right?
totally. And Mercury is retrograde for a good portion of the year, like at
Yeah.
least 6 or 7 weeks out of the year. And you can't just put your entire life on hold. And there's really actually quite a few gifts that you can glean from Mercury's retrograde period.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the work that's going to happen when Mercury is specifically under the beams of the sun
Yeah.
is internal work, is hidden work that is
Mhm.
not necessarily visible. That doesn't mean you're not doing the work. It just means that the work is being done, getting clear on what you really want before it is revealed. And I will say, just if you're curious, I'm going to go forward for just a minute here because what I want to see is when Mercury is going to separate by 15 degrees. So here we have kind of the heliacal rising of Mercury at around the summer solstice. So whatever seed you're planting around the 10th, there probably will be some visual manifestation of it around that summer solstice period of time.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's go back in time here again. Okay, I think we've got a pretty good handle on the new moon eclipse. The sun will then move into the third decan of Gemini. So this will be a time where instead of being able to juggle all the ambiguities, we may feel that we can't keep all these all these spinning plates in the air. And a choice is necessitated during this period of time. Or it could lead to the name of the card, which is called ruin. But remember, the Ten of Swords has a black sky that is going away to a new dawn. So I think that with any release, you are simultaneously inviting the new experience and committing to the new experience. So I would recommend with this decan placement is release what needs to be released and do it with love, because what you're doing is you're not just losing something, you're simultaneously committing to something that you want to nurture moving forward into Cancer season. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right, a few comments. We've got it'll be conjunct my north. This Casey Jones says the eclipse will be conjunct the north node at 17 degrees. Okay, so you'll feel this one, Casey. Lisa, fate steps in to see us through. Yes, definitely. When you wish upon a star. That's Jupiter, maybe at this point, the
Yeah.
Jupiter Venus trine.
Yeah.
Top Notch Vintage is here.
Hi, Top Notch.
Yeah, Top Notch Vintage says it's exact my ascendant. Oh boy, um, that'll be fun. Merc retrograde is okay to relaunch something already conceived of. Yeah, I agree. I think that
Oh, I love that.
yeah, I think Mercury retrograde. If we look at it from the way Schmidt would talk about it, you're recalling a witness to the stand. So there was testimony that was already given, and you're recalling that witness to give extra facts, to give extra interpretations, to give you more clues that may not have been revealed the first time. So yeah, you're kind of if there's something that you've already done, you may have to rework it on a certain level, but it's a divine course correction. Think of it like that too. The changes that need to be made are going to make for a better, more fruitful flowering than if you had just moved forward, without the review process or period. So, um, and a lot of people really they do launch things at the Cazimi of Mercury, even if it's retrograde. That's a powerful time for making a new start. But again, it's a start. It doesn't have to be the whole enchilada, so to speak.
Absolutely. I love that though. I didn't even think about that. Cause you think about review going back, but then thinking about like a relaunch of like, and that totally fits into that. And that's a really
Yeah.
helpful insight. So thank you, Carol.
Okay. So if we move forward to the 11th, And we'll keep going through here. We're it's a be a long one. I think we're getting some good insight. We're getting some good depth
Yeah.
here. It's a great conversation, CV. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my goodness, this is great.
All right, so June 11th and 12th, we're going to see Mars moving into Leo. So Mars moving into Leo improves Mars' condition by sign or by house, right? It is moving out of its fall, out of a place where it's very unhappy, and into a place where it has, I don't know if it has specific dignity here. Let me check my dignity chart. It only has dignity in the third face of Leo,
Okay.
but it is not at the bottom of the wheel of fortune anymore. So it's probably a slightly more comfortable position for Mars,
Yeah.
with a caveat. And it's a big caveat because now, by whole sign, we are witnessing Saturn, a traditional planet, by opposition.
Mm-hmm.
This is sorry, Leo risings, but this is going to be happening over your first and seventh house axis.
It's okay. We're all in this together. Feels better knowing I'm with one.
The Leo Pride Club here is probably going to be dealing with some challenges as far as issues of the self versus the other, where you may want to be making some changes and taking some action based on your own personal perspective, but there is going to be some limitations that are coming into place in the relationships in your life. And this is true for every axis as well. There's going to be a place in your life where you're going to want to move forward. You're going to want to fight for your authentic identity, but there may be some things that are more socially based, that are bringing limits and that are putting the brakes on potentially self-expression in whatever area of life Mars is going to be posited. There's I'm thinking about this in terms of our discussion that we had last night, CV, as well. We've been examining a new book that's coming out, Post-Colonial Astrology by Alice Sparkley Catt. And it raises some really interesting questions about astrology in general and about identity and about how we're using these symbols as astrologers in a modern context versus in a traditional context that may have been based on patriarchal themes, colonialism, or things of that nature. And it seems like kind of a hot button topic that is reflective of some of the hot button topics that we're seeing play out in society as well. So we'll see. We'll see how that all will play out, right, CV? I'm grinning.
I know. Do you ever like, sometimes it's so hard to look at the transits because you're thinking of your own life and you're like, just move past.
Yeah, let's just skip that one, right? Like, yeah, I think it's going to bring up, I think this transit is going to bring up a lot of uncomfortable questions and a lot of self-examination, because there's potentially maybe some frustration about being yourself within a larger context. And I think that that's part of what the breakdown I see of this particular aspect might be, is we may be trying to fight for an identity, but there is a Saturn is reviewing the need to work towards collective goals. So we may feel tempted to work towards an individual goal, but it's going to be coming into conflict with the collective experience. And that's a tough thing. And I don't know if we need to necessarily resolve it. We have to hold that duality. That may be part of this eclipse too, is being able to hold the duality between the individual and the collective.
Yeah, I just have this like visual of like Mars in Leo being this sort of like very like sort of, I feel like there's a group of people being like, let's just like, I really want to like do the thing. And I'm so excited. Let's do it. And like feeling like very like in the moment and heart centered. And then like Saturn in a helicopter is like, no, like the spotlight, like don't do it. It's, it's not going to work out for someone else or something. And like, there's just this sort of tug of war between like, let's have a party. And then no, we have to work tomorrow and the next day.
Well, and isn't that fascinating too? Because I think that we're moving into the summer season in the Northern Hemisphere here, and we've been bottled up for so long with
Mhm.
COVID and like with sheltering in place and things of that nature, that we may aggressively be like, it's time to do what we want. Ah. But there may be other things, limitations still that we have to respect where, I don't think the pandemic is completely over. I mean, if you aren't vaccinated right now, there's still quite a bit of danger for people out there, and I think that it's I don't know. I've had to really kind of think about what my role is as far as like rejoining society. I'm not in any rush. I'm kind of risk averse, so I'm coming from a very I guess philosophically risk averse, um, you know, I guess socially conservative viewpoint. Not like politically conservative, but just conservative as far as like I don't want to take a huge risk as far as like my health is concerned.
This this whole transit feels like the prelude to Jupiter going back into Aquarius, right? Because there's this
Yeah.
moment of like, I'm free, we're just all one. And then like Mars in like, sorry, Leo is like pumping up, like, let's party. And then Saturn's like, no, no, no. It's a sobering moment of Aquarius, like, let's look at the bigger picture. And I feel like there's going to be a bit of that that's going to be sort of like, again, the prelude to when Jupiter comes back. It's part of the same story.
Totally. I agree. All
Not
right,
over yet,
let's
people.
what's that?
It's
What's that?
not over yet.
It's not over yet. Yes, there's some stuff coming this summer, and I guess buckle up is what I will say. Um, okay, so let's move forward to the 13th. And then the 13th, there is a little minor transit here. We've got a nice sextile between Venus and Uranus. So potentially celebrating some new ways to create abundance or generosity, maybe some relationship breakthroughs. Now that Mars has moved out of Cancer, maybe we have some new ways to relate to one another that were revealed through Mars's transit through Cancer. So I think that's a little bit of a nice shakeup, not a nasty one. On that day, we also have the Sun making a square to Neptune. So that's kind of the big aspect of that day. Um, Sun Neptune. I don't know about you, CV, but Neptune aspects always make me feel tired. I don't see them, I don't experience them as this like transcendent, beautiful dream type of thing. I experience them as all the life has drained out of my body and I want to lay on the couch and stare off into the void. And I wonder if you have anything like that you've experienced.
This is like, people always think like, this is my perspective, and I feel like I'm dropped like the anvil on it, but like, oh, like dreamy is so good, right? Like we have this thing like dreamy, this is going to be like lovely. And I don't know, I personally am like, especially maybe it is because of this, the Neptune Mercury energy that's been happening, but I have been like having, I always remember my dreams and I always have pretty intense dreams, but they've been way more intense lately.
Yeah.
Like I can go back and I can still remember my dreams I had last week, like the sort of landscape of them. And like while they're interesting, they're also kind of terrifying. I think that's the thing. Like in dreams, we often like make sense of the world, and there are these really alien, at least for me, like landscapes that aren't that pleasant. Like it's being faced with this weird alternative reality that maybe like if I lived in the dream world and came to like hang out in this world would be equally terrifying. But that's my Neptune takeaway.
Yeah.
Is that the dream isn't always pleasant. Sometimes it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It makes you tired.
Yeah. Because it's just bringing up maybe things that aren't on the surface. It's both. I think Neptune can be both the beautiful, glistening sunlight coming through the ocean surface, but also it can be the great white shark that's circling the reef, waiting to hunt you and your fears.
Exactly. Or even those just like weird underwater creatures that like glow. They're not necessarily like bad, but they're kind of terrifying because you don't know what they are.
Yeah, yeah. I think that
James Cameron world.
Mercury, or I'm sorry, Neptune is a dissolving quality, right?
Mhm.
It's dissolving into mush and goo. And sometimes that feels okay. And sometimes we have to be careful that we're just not like, releasing all the structure that keeps, the wheels of life moving, right? Um, we've got some comments rolling in here,
Yeah.
CV.
Yeah.
Lisa says, I'm waiting to reread The Fable of the Lion and the Mouse. Yeah, that would be a
Mm.
good one for Mars opposite Saturn with that Leo placement.
Ooh.
Humility, I think, is a really good way of dealing with that transit in particular. Not getting conflicts based on feeling like you're disrespected or overinflated pride or things like that, which, you know, I would say as a Leo ascendant person, I can be guilty of that sometimes.
Mm.
If I can feel defensive if someone is putting into question my authenticity or like my self-expression, that is, we have to be careful not to be triggered by that on some level. Aligning light astrology says, I'm having a Neptune transit over my natal moon. I'm exhausted and studying mindfulness like it's my job. I sort of don't like the physical aspects. Yeah, I think Neptune moon is definitely feeling like, this dissolving of the body, right? Because
Mhm.
moon is the physical form coming in. Whereas if we contrast that with Neptune square the sun, I think it's a dissolving of our awareness of our spiritual, um, mm, I don't know, of like having a sense of purpose where our purpose is dissolved,
Yeah, and I can't like help but think when you talking about the sun as a sense of purpose, but also just this dissolving, going back to the dream world, it can feel like the dissolving of reality can just feel unpleasant because we don't know where we stand. like it can just feel very alienating and like suddenly you've been stranded.
Yeah, yeah, kind of that
The
confusion.
ground beneath your feet is literally like dissolving, and what happens like
Totally. Okay, so when we move forward to the 16th, Flag Day, uh, we will see one of the major aspects of 2021 that we've been kind of experiencing in the background, um, really over the course of the entire year. And we have a square between Saturn and Uranus. And, I've heard people talk about old versus new, what to conserve, what versus what to discard,
yeah.
collective needs versus the personal needs. We have um, our systems of money are being shaken up, right? Our financial systems. Um, we are trying to renegotiate collective values and collective structures and organizations. I wanted to throw this out to you, CV. There's a book that I'm reading called Tiny Universe by Joy Usher. And
I just started reading the companion today. You got me to get it.
yeah, nice. I wanted to read this
Please.
because this is a really great way of thinking about, of helping me reconceptualize Saturn and Aquarius in particular. It says, another reason why Aquarius is an appropriate sign for Saturn's rulership is to remember that there are two ways by which Saturn maintains its boundaries. One way is through the use of physical borders, Capricorn, and the other, and perhaps the more insidious, is to maintain separation through the control of information or the repetitious reinforcement of lies in order to instill a particular mindset. The term brainwashing is apt for the air sign, which is the passive quality of wetness and the ruling planet of Saturn. It's important to understand that sometimes fighting what we are conditioned to think can become one of the greatest battles of our lives. So she goes on to talk about Saturn being physical boundaries we construct, but Aquarius Saturn being more about the glass ceiling, ideas that we feel like we can't move past, right? Like where we have these assumptions socially that, oh, you're not supposed to do that. You can't do that because it's a faux pas or it's a limit that you can't get past, right? And I thought that was really fascinating, just seeing like this, the narrative controls and denying certain parts of the story to only present your specific viewpoint, right? What do you think of that?
Um, it made me think of bouncing here. Um, the first thing that came to mind, and maybe this isn't, I'm being a little off here, but I was thinking about like all the cyber attacks that have been happening recently with Saturn and Aquarius, and sort of that like limiting control in that way, or setting a boundary that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also say, like, think of the laws being passed in certain states where they are uh, limiting the ability for teachers to teach things like critical race theory, right?
Mhm.
Where they're saying we literally will not allow this information to be passed on to the youth of America for a specific agenda that we have, right? And in the same regard too, there is maybe I've been saying this that this happens on both sides of a political perspective. That is maybe a conservative perspective. We also have people in a more liberal type of side that are trying to make sure that certain histories are not taught as well, or that there's like the kind of cancel culture and saying if you don't agree with us, you're not going to be part of the public conversation anymore. I
Yeah,
think both are equally damaging on some level,
absolutely.
right? So I think that we're seeing that shakeup with Saturn and Aquarius being in a square, where we are going to have to potentially learn some flexibility in the way that we distribute resources, but also we may have to be re-examining, especially with this retrograde of Saturn, the social agreements that we have with one another and how we are going to be disseminating information and what narrative we're going to agree upon as a society. Societies don't function unless there's an agreement as far as what the animating principle is in that society. And I think we're in a polarized moment right now where there's a lot of disagreement about what the animating principle is for our particular society, especially in America. And it's creating a difficulty of finding consensus, even reality, right? It's like people are living in completely different realities. That's tough, I think.
I was just thinking about all of that happening in the backdrop of this, eclipse season on the Sagittarius Gemini axis, thinking about like which information do we keep, what don't we keep, like what, bringing those two conversations together.
Totally,
Curious to
totally.
see how it plays out.
Okay, so let's move on to the sun in Cancer 1. So that's giving us through Gemini, the sun through Gemini 3. And we're going to see on the 20th. Did I forget anything? I don't think I did. Yeah, that's the last major thing that's going on there. When the sun moves into Cancer 1 on the 20th, okay, this is our summer solstice. So this is our moment where we are seeing, okay, uh, that moment where the sun changes direction, right? So it is now, think about it like this. We've got the sun rising in what's called declination. This is the horizon line. And eventually, as it rises, every day at noon, it gets higher in the sky. We hit that point at Cancer, the summer solstice, and it begins to descend, and the days start to get shorter. So we've hit a peak moment where we have the most light that we'll have for the year, the most awareness that we'll have, and now we're going to be descending into darkness, and we've probably decided through our exploration in Gemini what we are going to nurture into form in the sign of Cancer. So Cancer 1 has some significations with the Two of Cups. Austin Coppock calls it mother and child. And I wanted to explore with you, CV, the theme of, first of all, that theme of sacrifice, and also the concept of motherhood being something where we are both consuming and providing. Because that was one of the themes of that decan is what do we consume so that we provide? And how do we balance out nurturing, receiving, and providing for others?
Hmm. Um, I'm like, there's so much. What was the exact question?
Yeah. What do you think is, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to figure out what exactly is the question in there. Uh, what do you think is the best way with some of these transits that we're experiencing to balance out how you provide energy for people and
Sure.
how you take in nourishment to be able to provide it for what you're trying to create.
Well, I think of um it's funny because for my personal right like trigger moment, like I feel like I'm at an age where I realized I'm not having children. Everyone's talking about babies. I'm like, why does cancer always have to be babies? um Motherhood in this
Yeah.
very linear concrete form. I digress. Anyway, it's interesting to think about, right? Like that Gemini moment of feeling, okay, like what is it? I loved how you said that. What is it that we're nurturing? Right. So like feeling it's this sort of eclipse season. It's very like heavy and and eclipse season always happens. Well, no, ignore that bubble of a thought. At any rate, we had this like we're sort of in Gemini where we're thinking about what it is we're giving birth to, right? And then we're going to Cancer, and it's this idea that like we're going to get this peak light, and it um the first thing I think about is this idea of like, creating healthy boundaries of like the crab shell, right? I think that's how you do it, right? You have to be aware of everything you take in. You can't just you have to discriminate about what you take in
Yeah.
because it's going to be within your shell, right? And that's you can't just take anything in because you are creating this secure environment. So being aware of that, and then also being aware of like what leaves. Cancer has this tendency to hold on to things. So maybe it's more of on the input. So maybe continuing this idea that like, as we go, we transition. It's interesting because we're in the height of summer, and so it's so fascinating. I'm just like thinking about this, like, right, like thinking about guarding like what is ours, not ours, but
Well, I think,
like an idea.
well, you're on the right track as far as um Cancer is sort of like the Chariot card, right? Like
Yeah.
it's our vehicle. We're trying to infuse something into a body.
Yeah.
And I like what you were saying about what are we going to take in and how are we going to transmute that into nourishment, either for our creative children or our children of the mind, our
Mhm.
projects that we want to breathe life into,
Mhm.
right? And I think that as a Cancer Sun myself and Cancer Mercury, um, I do have to be discriminating about what I take in so that what I'm providing is nourishing, right?
Yeah.
I have to like say, okay, I have to create a boundary so that I'm not just absorbing negativity all the time, because I will reflect like the moon. I'll reflect someone's negativity back to them. It's painful for me and for them. So sometimes you have to like you say, create a healthy boundary, check in with your vehicle, like make sure you're taking care of the body that you're going to, that is carrying the soul's purpose and energy throughout the world. I do think one of the things that is going to be interesting that's happening is Jupiter is turning retrograde on this day as well, on the solstice day.
Mhm.
But also, now that the sun's moved into Cancer, Jupiter is in an overcoming trine to the sun. That's really nice. I'm thinking it's time to go to the beach. It's time to like go swimming or something, or just go somewhere relaxing where you can kind of just take care of your body and really just be in the waters of your, of your liminal spaces. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In my head, I'm still trying to think. I'm like putting the whole seasonality thing together, and there's something about this when we're in spring where it's almost like we're looking forward to summer in this really big way. And then when we're in summer, it's sometimes even though we're at the height of it, maybe it's just me, it always feels like the moment feels so fleeting. Like the minute we're in it, it almost feels like we're just about to be out of it.
Yeah.
And
Well, because we're
and
trying to sustain that time, right?
exactly. Yeah. Sustenance. There we go. I think that's the word, trying to sustain it. And how do you do that? And understanding like maybe the actions you take too. It's interesting in like terms of everything else that's happening in this chart, right? There's maybe a need for some sort of sobriety and being cautious.
Yes. Well, and that will bring us to the 21st, the day after, where we have Oops. Oh, stop. Sorry. Sometimes it goes crazy. Uh, June 21st, we will see Venus making a trine to Neptune. So again, this is kind of a nice aspect. It's a harmonious aspect between Venus and Neptune, but it may be leading us to being a little bit overly idealistic, overly indulgent.
Yeah.
Again, a need for caution and circumspection when it comes to our pursuit of pleasure. Austin Coppock talks about the third decan of Cancer as being related to luxurious tastes and
Mm.
figuring out what to do with an excess. So this is a very abundant decan, but there
Mm.
may be challenges of thinking about, okay, I have enough, but because I have enough, maybe that there's questions of did I take something from someone else, and what do I do with this excess? Can I give it back? Can I keep
Mhm.
the flow of prosperity going and not become a hoarder of generosity or prosperity? So this is I think just a dreamy aspect where relax, take a time out, whatever that means for you. Uh, I don't know if it's how safe people feel traveling or whatnot, but I'm sure that there's ways to do that and connect with nature in a way that is safe at this point.
Mhm.
So I'm looking forward to a little bit of that time, I think. If we go to the 22nd, we'll kind of try to wrap this up here. On the 22nd, the Mercury turns direct. So at 16 degrees Gemini, we have a direct Mercury. And usually important events happen at the Mercury station. Um,
Mhm.
Again, this is happening concurrently with Mercury emerging from under the sun's beams. So not only will Mercury be moving forward again, but it will also be visible. So I think this is a really important day for the things that you've been trying to examine for the last few weeks with the questions that are being asked, right?
Mhm.
Um, the 23rd, we've got a Sun Jupiter trine. What do you think about Sun Jupiter trine, CV?
Um, I'll take any trine from Jupiter.
Yeah, right. I think this is one of the most positive aspects you can possibly have from any planet is an overcoming trine from the greater benefic.
Mhm.
So I really think even despite some of the rumblings we're going to be feeling with Mars opposite Saturn and things of that nature, and the Saturn Uranus square, this is a week or a moment, a few days, between the 20th and like the 24th,
Mhm.
where we really are going to be feeling good. I think there's a lot of potential to feel good, to like, be able to connect with the people we love, I think, to take a time out and to take a break and to really feel a sense of relief that comes from having made a choice and releasing the anxiety that comes with trying to carry too many options forward, right? That sense of relief. Oh, finally I made a choice and now this is where we're going, right?
Oh yeah, I love that. On the heels of the stationing, it's like you step into the room and you look out and there's this like terrific rainbow. You're like, I can do it now.
Yes, perfect. I
I can walk into the rainbow.
perfect. Yeah, I love that rainbow image for this. We'll see if we can see some rainbows.
Mhm.
Now, there is one little wrench in the gears on this day that we will have to acknowledge. We do have an opposition between Venus and Pluto that is perfecting on the same day as this Jupiter Sun trine. So some of the similar themes that may have come up with the Mars Pluto opposition earlier in the month on the 5th are probably going to be revisited in a certain different way where relationships are going to be put to the test. There may be some things that bubble up from the surface that we have been repressing, where we're trying to create harmony in that area of our life, but we're going to have to kind of deal with maybe some deep feelings around this. Maybe through relaxing, you're allowing yourself to feel some, some things that you weren't able to deal with in the past. And maybe you're sitting on the beach or you're sitting in your backyard in your kiddie pool, and through that ability to relax, the emotions just start coming up, and maybe there's this great sadness, I think, too, for what we've gone through over the last few months and year here. I think that when we start to feel that beauty again, it can also bring up some of the things that um, we've dealt with. And I think I know for me personally, there's been a lot that I've felt that I've had to like not feel just to maintain a center to be able to get through this period of time.
Yeah.
That when we start to relax a little bit, some of that might start pouring out, right?
The first word that comes to mind is like thawing, right? You're like, oh, it's exciting. It's getting warmer. Things are nice. But then you look around and you see what the snow is covering and having to
Yeah.
like come to terms with that.
Yeah. Thawing out of our emotions for
Mhm.
sure. And maybe in addition to this beautiful relaxation that is possible during this few days, maybe it's okay to have a good cry. Maybe it's okay to have a good cathartic release that will allow you to move forward and to purify, that which has been repressed or that which has come up and or potentially the recognition of what has become corrupted. Remember, Venus is a planet of purification. It's a ritual planet. Okay, so I think cleaning something that has fallen into disrepair could also bear some fruit. All right.
I have to say this though, because like you brought it like we're talking about Venus and Pluto.
Yeah.
And I just imagine suddenly I'm talking about these rainbows and you're like, oh, but look. And I had this like vision of like Persephone, like playing with her friends in a field and being like, this is such a great day. The sun's out. There's these terrific flowers. And then Hades coming up.
Yeah. That yes. Wow. That's profound, CV. And I'm that makes me nervous, but also that's an amazing image because you're totally right. Like Persephone was just like smelling the flowers and was like, just enjoying the beauty of spring or early summer. And
Yeah.
then just Hades just erupts from the ground and like in this great chariot with these big, black horses and just swallows her up. And
But
I think
ultimately, you're sorry to interrupt. Go on.
go ahead.
You could think of it as like, because I was like, we always go like, oh, it's bad. But I mean, in some ways, it was a course correction, right? We
Right.
we we learned to respect and love the seasons because they were almost taken away from us. And so maybe we should all go meditate on that story.
Yeah, I think just one final warning with this aspect is sometimes Pluto Venus contacts can
Yeah.
coincide with trying to assert power in a relationship. And we have to, I think, just be careful that you don't get into
Mm,
manipulative ways of trying to gain nurturing or gain love or gain or even providing it. This could be something where we're trying to provide love and nurturing, but we could be doing it in a way that is limiting or in a way that is manipulative or potentially forceful. So I would say love people, but you know, CV, do you remember that show? I don't know. We're about the same age. You remember Animaniacs? Remember that show?
I did, but I never really watched it. But please tell me.
Okay, in Animaniacs, there's this girl, and I found out that the actor is Cree Summer, who has the same birthday as me, July 7th. And she would go, and all the animals were afraid of her because she'd go and squeeze them, and be like, "I want to hug you and squeeze you and love you
Oh yeah.
forever," and like, and I'm actually, it was a moment of recognition because I do that with my cats, and I'm like, "I love you so much," but I think you have to be careful not to overly get involved in situations and overly provide to where you may be, creating this feeling with people that they are trapped, where they're not able to have their own sense of agency and things of that, right?
That's perfect. I think that's a perfect Venus in Cancer, and then Pluto getting like, I'm getting the hell out of here.
Right. A couple comments are coming in.
Please.
Tarya is saying she she agrees with the lighting light astrology. All the dreams have been coming true. Can't believe my life is so good. Well, that's great, Tarya. You have Jupiter, a nice Jupiter transit right now with some Pisces energy in your chart. A lighting light astrology says that's excellent to hear. Don't get me wrong, I have the best place right now, but I've been going through hell and quit my job to get here. Blarg Neptune. Yeah, that's some challenging stuff that's going on. Lisa is saying, right on CV, Hades is coming in hot. Like, right. For sure. All right, we've got two tiny things, and then we'll wrap and tie a bow on it with
Woo!
an I-Ching reading. You're a trooper, CV. Thank you for going on this journey with me today. I think we've covered a lot of awesome ground. We're gonna go to the 24th, and on the 24th we are seeing a full moon. So here is the full moon in Capricorn. And I plan on doing some live streams for the lunations for the eclipse next week and for this lunation in particular. But we've got an opposition between the sun and the moon. Um, any thoughts on this full moon here? Noticing anything that's
Well,
sticking out to you?
I mean, it's interesting because I think there's like on the heels of, I don't know, on the heels of that Venus Pluto opposition, and it feels like there's like this crisis point, and like I'm going to like, I don't know, maybe the like, it makes, I'm just going to continue sort of the metaphor here, but it makes me think of Demeter like figuring out, like when she figures out what happened to her daughter and she like loses it. um
She honks the horn of life and says,
she honks the horn of life, and then she like steals away in what she tries to like, you know, live as what, like a nursemaid, because she wants to make this baby and more, and blah 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 blah. But I feel she no, but at first though she's going crazy. She's like bothering everybody, and it's like this big crisis point when she just anguish. I'm not saying it's going to be mass anguish, but it could be. There's been a lot of stuff happening, and this could feel like in a very emotive.
well, and eventually she withdraws, right? And she
Yeah,
says, I'm not going to provide life on Earth anymore. I'm going to disregard my uh, I guess I don't know if it's her duty to bring life.
exactly. When she stops, yeah, because eventually in the story, fast forward to the Capricorn part,
Mhm.
where she hides in her like temple and refuses to like do anything, and so eventually like the planet starts to starve and people stop giving sacrifices to the gods, and then they intervene. So I
Yeah.
love this life taking away moment. It's very sober. I feel it's very sobering. That's my last commentary on that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this full moon, the moon is going to be in its fall. So, n- or is it its exile? Fall? Did you exile? Sorry, in its
Mhm.
exile. I'm catching myself there. So, not a comfortable place for the moon. The moon will be in a place of death, like Demeter, where the sun is trying to bring life with that sun in Cancer. So, balancing out creation versus what we're letting go of. That two of cups versus the two of pentacles energy that we're seeing with the first decan of Cancer and the first decan of Capricorn. I think that we want to come to union, but we also are trying to figure out how we're going to juggle the responsibilities of where we want to create. Like that two of pentacles card is like saying, where do we really want to plant the seed? Where is the best place for us to create and whatnot? Susanna is saying I was born under a Cap full moon, so this one will be effective for you, Susanna. Tell us what it's going to be like. You're living it, so like, I'm sure that there's an energy of trying to balance out competing needs, maybe domestic and professional as well with
Yeah.
this full moon. Okay, and then the last thing that we have on our list here. First of all, Neptune's going to turn retrograde on the 25th, which, happens fairly regularly for these outer planets. It's a longer transit. So I don't think it's going to be something that's, I don't know if we're going to feel that super personally,
Yeah.
but maybe a reviewing of some of the idealism that we have. But the main thing that's going to be happening on the 27th is we have Venus moving into Leo, joining Mars and trying to maybe soften some of the conflicts that we're experiencing with the opposition between um, Mars and Saturn. So maybe an attraction to putting ourselves out there a little bit more, maybe desiring to have some more attention. This could be helping us getting a little bit more clear on some identity issues that are coming up with the opposition between Mars and Saturn. Do you have any more thoughts on Venus in Leo there, CV?
I'm excited.
Party time, right?
I'm just like watching Venus. I'm like when like now I can't. I love the idea of Mars is the surgery, Venus sews it up. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
now I can't like stop. I can't not think that, especially since it's happening in our first house.
I love it. And it's going to be for us Leo crew here. It'll be moving into our first house. So
Yeah.
whatever conflicts we're feeling, either internally or trying to figure out what identity steps to take, Venus is going to be trying to help at that point. Okay, I think we did it. I think we got through all of the aspects for June and a few extra ones. So what I like to do, CV, on these kind of reports is I like to do an I-Ching reading to talk about the essence of whatever I'm exploring here. And the question that I asked was, what is the essence of the astrology for June 2021? And what I got was the hexagram number 49, which is called revolution. And it is changing to hexagram 31, which is called mutual attraction. So some other words for 49, revolution, molting, shedding old skin, metamorphosis, transformation, out with the old. Sounds kind of like a transition in eclipse periods, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So one of the questions that Hilary Barrett asks is, how can we break the mold? How can the form change to express the essence? Now, the changing line that we have here is called line number 1 at the bottom. And it says, wrapped in the hide of a yellow cow. And they described in the translation I was looking at, yellow being the color of moderation or the mean, balance, and the cow being associated with docility. So restraining through moderation and patience, avoiding impulsive action due to internal discomfort, making changes gradually by doing the inner work first. So I think that was what I was trying to bring into the beginning of this topic is we feeling this need to change, but we have to let the process play out, and I don't think that we can force the issue. And this is changing to the hexagram mutual influence, which also is interpreted as reciprocity, mutual attraction, courtship, wooing. And Hilary Barrett asks, which influence is active? What does it draw you towards, and what is its place in your life? So I want to ask you, CV, what any final thoughts as far as maybe what the I-Ching is speaking towards and how to navigate these transits for June with that insight?
I mean, I think it covered a lot of our discussion, right? Like, I feel like the whole sort of theme of this month is, trying to have this dialogue between disparate parts, whether that's the, the Cancer Capricorn, the full moon, or they're always oppositions, but somehow Cancer Capricorn just feels like extra. Or, the movement through Gemini, Mercury's retrogrades, Mars, Venus situation, all of it. It feels like this there's going to be a lot of action, a lot of sort of working through things, and to proceed with caution, because if you go too hot in one direction, you're just going to get bounced back. In like the kind of feeling where aggression just yields more aggression. So this is a very important month to, again, as we've mentioned throughout, take a step back, dive into the like Jupiter's waters, use that as your key to just look around, take it in, try not to be so reactive, maybe read the 4 agreements again.
Yes, there you go. I love that. Read the 4 agreements again, or read it for the first time. If you've never read it, Don Miguel Ruiz, it's a great book. It's a wonderful way of approaching the world, and it's helped me move through a lot of sticky situations. And, really the gist of it is try not to make assumptions, ask a lot of questions, be true to your word, right? And I don't know, what were the other 2?
You did 3, right? Impeccable with your word. Don't make
word.
assumptions. So what was the third you had? There's 4 of them.
I know there's 4. Look at us.
Don't gossip. I feel like don't gossip's one.
Yeah, I don't know if that fits in with impeccable with your word, but always do your best. and
Yes.
your
Uh-huh.
best might change from time to
Yes.
time. So
Yes.
maybe you're not able to like do everything that you wish you could do, but do the best that you can. And I don't remember the last one.
Yeah. We got the gist of it.
We get the gist of it. Yeah. So ask questions, do your best. You're doing great. You know, don't make assumptions, and then the fourth will be revealed to you over time.
Still think, even if it's not, if it fits into one of those categories, we could say don't gossip. Because I feel like gossip was like, there was
Yeah,
a,
I think that's important, and that's it's easy to do because we want to. Sometimes we want to express some of the deep feelings that we have and get recognition for the pain that we're feeling. And sometimes there's appropriate times for that, and there's other times where it's really inappropriate and it can lead to external conflicts. So maybe you have a good friend that you can trust that is, you know, where you're able to keep that trust tree where you can talk about things that are bothering you. Um, I'm brought back to a show. I don't know if you've seen the show Ted Lasso. Are you familiar with this show?
no.
It's about this football coach from Kansas that goes over to England to coach soccer. And he's put into this difficult situation where he's being set up to fail. Okay.
Okay.
But he has such a nice, generous um, way of approaching things that he eventually wins people over. And I think that that's something that I think the Four Agreements really speaks to as well is kill them with kindness. You know, you can win over people through just being, uh, you know, being nice. You know, and I found that that gets people far in the world. I always say at the end of these, be kind to one another and be kind to yourself because that kindness does extend to yourself. If you're constantly beating yourself up, it's going to be hard for you to extend that generosity to others. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great advice for this month too. Just remember to be kind and take a breath when you want to, punch someone in the face, maybe.
Well, CB, this was amazing. Thank you for joining me today. Where can we find you and the services that you provide?
I am Art of the Zodiac, art other all underscores on Instagram, and artofthezodiac.co. Again, I do sell apothecary products. I enjoy making them in my kitchen. .co.com. So CV at Art of the Zodiac. Thank you. And who
Nice.
else? Anyone? Do we have any goodbye comments from anyone? I can't see these chat.
Taria says, "Love your piles of books, CV," with a heart emoji. Yeah, I'm surrounded with books here too. I think this
Yeah.
is we've been kind of booking out.
Yeah.
Top Notch Vintage says, "I was just listening to a shamanic astropod. Venus in Leo represents the Amazon goddess of creativity." Okay, that's
Ooh.
cool. That's juicy. Susanna says, "I cast 49 yesterday when I was just overwhelmed with too much going on."
Mm.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot going on and taking your time, right? And Lisa says, "Seriously, guys, watch the movie Crash." All right, we'll add that to the list.
Gosh.
We'll watch Crash. We'll re-engage with the Four Agreements, and
The
hopefully
Lion and the Mouse. We're gonna go read
the
the Lion.
Lion and the Mouse. There you go. Good. And for those of you who enjoy what CV and I are bringing to the table here, I will be appearing on her channel on Instagram live tomorrow, Art of the Zodiac, at 11 a.m. And we'll kind of rehash some of this and maybe get some new insights as well. And we'll trade. Like I'm kind of facilitating here, and CV will facilitate tomorrow, and we'll both get to express our Leo risings. It's a little
And
different vibe.
send us an email. We are starting the Leo Rising Club. If you want to
Yeah.
join, someone's a support group really for this month.
Yeah. Well, this was really a pleasure, CV, and I hope we can do. I know we're going to do this again in
Yeah.
some form or another. So thank you so much for coming on today, and thank you everyone in the chat for all of your comments and your participation. If you are enjoying this channel, make sure that you're hitting that like button. That's the best thing you can do to help to keep this information going out to the most people possible. Hit that subscribe button if you're a new person. And if you want to make a donation to the work that I do here, you can send a donation through buymeacoffee.com. that is helping me keep the lights on and do the research to do all of these things. And reach out to one of either CV or I for a reading, support, buy her apothecary goods. These are ways that you can support people in the work that they do. So thank you so much for being here today, and we will see you all the next time.
Bye.
All right, see you later.